let's go back and let's look at some of the comments and questions here. Yeah, so here's Kristen saying that her grandma can't have eggs, and she fainted when they gave it to her. And maybe that was an egg allergy, maybe not. I don't know. She could have had a vasovagal response as well. Some people, when they get shots, they pass out. Are there carcinogens in the vaccine? Yeah. Again, formaldehyde is a known cancer potential. Some of you are pretty strong on your nose. If the flu shot is not enough to stop all the different kinds of flu, why is it such a big deal? And also, why did so many people die last year when I bet a bunch of them had their flu shots? Well, look, people die from the flu every year. Now, the CDC numbers report, I think one of their advertorials or advertisements says that 36,000 people die a year from flu, but the actual numbers are closer to about 2,000 people a year, at least in the States, that die from the flu. And I don't know what the difference in those discrepancies are. I don't know why they make one report in one place and the actual statistics, when we look at death rates, not that many people are actually dying from the flu. I think it's exaggerated on purpose. That's just my humble opinion. I can't literally prove that. I can't go and say this person knows the true answer and didn't tell us all. But I can look and I can read and I can watch how the statistics are being reported and advertised. I think the bigger question beyond this, okay, so if cold and flu season can create, influenza, the virus influenza can create problems. And what you have to understand about a flu shot is, generally speaking, that we have usually doctors, researchers will go to China. They'll see which strains of the flu shot they can predict will make it to America, for cold and flu season. And those are the three strains that generally get put into the flu shot vaccination. So first and foremost, viruses mutate. They can morph and change and mutate from host to host to host. So going over to another country to try to predict what may end up showing up here before it mutates, or if it mutates 20 times, there's no way we can predict that. And this is one of the reasons why the efficacy of the shot is so poor. We can't guarantee it works, and it works as little as 33% of the time. And some would even argue that you can't prove or disprove that it doesn't work because you can't prove a negative consequence. So at any rate, the shot is developed as a result of the strains from another country and predicting how those might end up on our doorstep and what we need to have within our actual vaccine. That's the scientific basis for how they come up with the different strains. I think it's more important to understand that there are a few things that happen in the fall that for many people coincide with flu season, that if you understand this, you can do your job at supporting your own immune function and building your own immunity and helping yourself reduce the risk for developing influenza. And so one of the biggest risk factors associated with the flu shot, and this is actually, there have been landmark studies on this, is vitamin D. So when vitamin D levels drop, and this is true no matter where you're at in the world, when vitamin D levels drop, which is generally in the fall, because of the change, because of the tilt of the planet and the change in the daylight and the quantity of daylight that we're being exposed to. But when vitamin D levels tend to fall, we see a weakening in the immune system that predisposes people to influenza. So one of the best things you can do this time of the year is go ask your doctor to check your 25 OHD levels. These are vitamin D levels circulating in your bloodstream, and if they're below 50, then you might want to consider what I'm about to talk about, which is high-dose vitamin D therapy. Vitamin D therapy is very, very effective. And as a matter of fact, the closer you live to the equator, the less this problem is. That's why people that live on the equator in tropical regions have less influenza. There's actually less overall, epidemiologically speaking, there's less outbreak of the flu in those areas because there's so much sunshine and so much more vitamin D availability. So again, vitamin D therapy, if we really want to boost the immune system, and you can go check this out on our website too. We actually have a protocol on the website. Anybody can do it. It's safe to do unless you have a disease that's impacting your kidneys. So if you have a disease that's effectively impact like scleroderma, for example, you would not want to do this therapy. This therapy is not for you if you have loss of kidney function, or if you have if you have major diabetes and your kidneys are 50% working. This is not a therapy that you want to do. But if you've got perfectly healthy kidneys, this therapy is perfectly safe for you. And that's Basically, as an adult, 150-pound adult, we do 150,000 international units of D per day. Okay, and we do that times 3 days. And that will get your vitamin D levels up above 70, and it will keep them there for a long period of time. It will actually keep them there for several months, thus giving you a greater degree of immune protection through the winter months. So if you have this done sometime in late September, October, and it's under the mark, you can do this therapy to build your immune system coming into cold and flu season. It is hands down one of the most effective ways to put prevention in your corner. Now, if you start to come down with sickness and you haven't already done this is also something that I have seen be very effective for people who are starting to come down with a flu. If they do this, it allows for their body, their immune system to recover, and oftentimes will stop that flu from actually taking a grip and really, really taking hold of the immune system and crashing them. So this is a great therapy you can use not only for prevention and building your immune function, but if you, at the first sign of a cold or a flu, do this therapy, and it can also be very helpful and very effective. Now, one of the other things that you can do, and this is tried and true, is very effective too, is high doses of vitamin C. I've got something called Detox C. You've got to be careful with vitamin C, especially those of you who are my true gluten-free warriors out there who are not eating grains. You've got to be careful with vitamin C because a lot of your powders, a lot of your over-the-counter products are actually made from corn, genetically modified corn. So the vitamin C is actually derived through a process from genetically modified corn. I don't recommend that. That's why I have my own formulation. It's to avoid that aspect. But Detox C is a formulation. It's a vitamin C that's derived from an organic African wild potato, and that 5 grams of that for an adult is a very, very effective way at supporting immune function through cold and flu season, and highly, highly recommend combining these two. Now, something else that many people find very helpful is vitamin A. Vitamin A is also a very potent, very strong immune supporting nutrient. Your immune system needs vitamin A to make weapons, to fight viruses, to fight bacteria. So those three, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, can be very effective. Vitamin D can be checked very easily, with a regular doctor's visit. Usually doctors won't check your vitamin C, or if they do check it, they'll check it in your serum, and that's not a real accurate way to measure it. Same thing with vitamin A, not a real accurate way to measure it. But you can ask, and maybe you had a doctor who will measure it, you can ask for intracellular measurements of vitamin A and C, and again, you can support yourself accordingly based on a deficiency. You can also take these things without testing, and it's very safe to do so. Again, the only caveat is if you have a vitamin or a kidney problem and you're taking high doses of vitamin D, what can happen is you can put vitamin D increases serum calcium, so it can overwork your kidneys. If your kidneys aren't functioning, it can overburden them with calcium, and that's not a good scenario. So if you've got kidney dysfunction, don't take high-dose vitamin D. If you have perfectly fine, healthy, functioning kidneys, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin A can all be effective for short-term use to boost the immune system, to improve immune function, and get you over the hump for cold and flu season. So these are very super effective, very easy to do, and they're tried and true. And in my experience, they work better than pretty much any other home-based remedy that I've come into contact with or encountered in the last 20 years of practice. So again, I don't think anybody listening tonight was planning on getting a flu shot, so maybe I asked a loaded question to my audience, but again, I wanted you to know this information because you're going to have relatives who come at you, and this actually happened the other day. And as a matter of fact, I'll just poll the audience. How many of you have had a family member who maybe had a new baby, a new infant, and they refused to allow you access to that new baby unless you got a flu shot? These are some of the types of things that other family members might enforce or might try to enforce, because this is kind of the tactic that a lot of pediatricians and nurses try to enforce. They try to put the fear of God into women and into men, fathers and mothers who have little tiny babies, and say, well, if you don't get the flu shot and other people don't have the flu shot, they shouldn't be around your baby because they'll make your baby sick. It really, in all honesty, that's nonsense. What you want to do if you're around somebody else's baby is you want to make sure that you're showered and clean and that you're practicing good hygiene techniques. And on that note, infectious disease in the United States, I think it's important that you understand that from an infectious disease standpoint, and influenza is a disease, it's a transmittable disease from person to person, right, through bodily fluids. Dramatic reduction of infectious disease in this country did not occur predominantly as a result of a 43% efficacy of a flu shot. Why did it occur? Why do we have a lot less of this today than we did years and years ago? This isn't the reason. We can't even predict whether or not it's going to work, and most doctors don't even do it themselves. What created the massive reduction in infectious disease, including influenza, was the advent of water purification, meaning instead of having water that wasn't being cleaned and properly filtered, we started to add chlorine to the water as an antiviral, antibacterial to reduce the spread and the risk of spreading of germs through water as a transmission medium. But we also, and that was done in 1914, just so you know, if you look at infectious disease prior to 1914, it was it was exponentially higher than what it was come 1920 after 6 solid years of implementation of water treatment. And then when you bring in the 1920s through the 1930s, we had centralized plumbing being installed in construction in homes. And so you had a lot less contamination through water through plumbing. You had a lot less contamination of humans through infectious water or through contaminated water as well. So those two things combined with hand washing and common sense hygiene were what led to the massive reduction in the incidence of infectious disease. So I think it's important that, if you do have elderly or under 2-year-olds at risk, you still want to practice good hygiene principles, washing your hands and making sure that you're minimizing the spread. But at the same time, not having a flu shot doesn't put that baby at any risk of danger. I think we could argue just the opposite. I think we could argue that by injecting yourself with a live influenza virus and creating the flu in yourself, you actually increase the risk of spreading that to that baby who's under 2, and not the opposite.
Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.